When researching the Crimson Fist Loyalist chapter, the first thing you hear is the name of Chapter Master Pedro Cantor, Wasnagrod, Rinswald, Loki Sector, and not much more. It seems that the very nature of this chapter's Astartes is to outright avoid personal glory. The Crimson Fists issue glory as an ego-driven distraction from duty performed in service to the Emperor. When Chapter Master Pedro Cantor met Primarch Rebute Gilliman, he did so without pomp and circumstance. Thus is a fitting description of the entire Crimson Fist chapter. They are too busy using their chainswords to polish them. As inspiring as the chapter master is, the entire chapter does not revolve around one person. Although far from service, Ordo Theoreticus found it necessary to send Inquisitorial acolyte Naerina to Rin's world. She could fully investigate a single company of the famed chapter. Companies 1 through 5, the battle line companies, were engaged throughout the Loki sector and unavailable. The 6th company is a quote-unquote reserve company, and conveniently, Captain Ivorness Fost had petitioned an audience with any inquisitor from the Ordo Theoreticus. When investigating the 6th company of the Crimson Fist chapter, it became a study of how the top officers' personalities forged the very nature of a company. I originally intended to focus either broadly the chapter entire, or narrowly on a single pivotal character of the 6th company. I found that neither were entirely possible. The entire chapter isn't currently on Rin's world. While the supporting cadre of the 6th company are vital to realizing the vision of the Ice Captain, Ivorness Fost, every Crimson Fist has access to Captain Fost because he values input from multiple sources. So, I started by interviewing the cadre. Tech Marine Jesikiah Fjord has a solitary and methodical nature. He is easily the oldest person in the 6th company and fought beside Chapter Master Pedro Cantor during Snagrod's War. Fjord is physically slender and considerably taller than most non-Primaris Astartes. Although Fjord is Captain Fost's closest friend, the rest of the chapter respect his aloof nature. Lieutenant Mortimer Snerd and Tech Marine Fjord had a disagreement over strategic deployment against an orc infestation. Lieutenant Snerd's aggressive assault-oriented tactics clashed with Jesikiah Fjord's methodical approach. Both tactics were supported by the Codex Astartes. The dispute was resolved, as are many disagreements between Astartes, in the combat simulator's non-lethal arena. Their conflict concluded with a perfect imprint of Lieutenant Mortimer Snerd's body on the ceiling of the arena. Snerd voluntarily transferred to the Black Templars immediately thereafter. Tech Marine Jesikiah Fjord is the duty-bound custodian of the Fist of Vengeance relic. Jesikiah's obsessive attention to metalcraft inspired him to mastercraft his personal Stormbolter. Note, I think he liked me. We're both technophiles, and I think he almost smiled during our brief interview. It's so difficult to tell with so many cybernetic implants in his skeleton and enhanced muscular structure. Chaplain Johanna Heinrichsen was sanctioned by the Inquisition several times during his tenure with the Eternal Crusade of the Black Templars. He evokes the canticle of hate better than anyone in the entire Loki sector. Such pure hatred causes unwarranted suspicion. Pity the soul who questions Johanna's faith in the Emperor. Chaplain Heinrichsen described himself as preaching to the choir while serving with the Black Templars. He found renewed purpose in his service with the Crimson Fist and was awarded the Benediction of Fury relic. There is a chapter-wide jest that he raged a Khorne Berserker into submission. It sounds like a joke until you meet the legend, the living embodiment of the Emperor's righteous wrath, Chaplain Johanna Heinrichsen. Recorded video and witness accounts of Johanna and Jesikiah fighting side by side are the stuff of legend and nightmare. Enemy assaults that somehow avoid or survive the bolter fuselage and breach battlefield fortifications are dispatched with both mechanical efficiency and unbridled Imperial fury. Because of a 19-minute delay in an Imperial Guard transport flight, I was able to interview one of the newest members of the officer cadre, Vanguard Lieutenant O'Neill. I had a few minutes to meet him with the only Primaris/Phobos officer in the 6th Company. The motor pool was their pickup point. It's a huge gravel field close to the flight hangar. As I walked across the cavernous hangar, I could see him and 2 squads of infiltrators waiting by the aeropads. They were relaxed and chatting amongst themselves. Lieutenant O'Neill was the center of attention, entertaining the troops by juggling 2 combat knives and several pieces of gravel. I hurried to meet them before their flight arrived. Stepping out of the relatively cool and shaded confines of the bay, I was accosted by the bright summer sun and heat of the dusty motor pool. I squinted and then felt the impacts of 2 daggers, one buried hilt deep in my chest and the other beneath my chin. That's the thing about being a psycho. Let your guard down for an instant, and the next thing you know, you've intruded on someone else's thoughts. Reality snapped back into focus, and I hadn't broken stride. As I approached, he sheathed the paired combat blades and tossed the rocks back at the squads with dexterity and flair that I couldn't hope to match. Lieutenant O'Neill hails from an archipelago that has a unique history and dialect. It's practically impossible to understand him, even though we speak the same language. Physically, he's smaller than his Primaris brethren, with red hair, green eyes, and alabaster skin. During the impromptu interview, he was overly polite, jovial, and never once let on that he thought about killing me mere moments before. He referred to me as Lass. I learned that his close combat blades are named Thistle and Trickster. After action-filled reports in his file mention that he sometimes connects them with Eldari monofilament to make an impromptu and highly effective garrote. The Valkyrie transport appeared in the sky, and I asked him one last question. The Emperor has a purpose for us all, Lieutenant O'Neill. What is your purpose? Pausing, he contemplated the answer for a moment and smoothly replied, and I cannot do his accent justice, so, Aye, that he does, my lies drawn. True enough, I murder until slain. Slán will you? And with that, he turned his back and boarded the transport. To murder until slain. That disturbed me. Fjord attends to the machine spirit of the Emperor's equipment. Heinrichsen administers to the spirit of the company. O'Neill isn't killing the enemies of mankind. He's a murderer. The Sixth Company is replete with noteworthy and exemplary Astartes, but the true heart of the Sixth Company beats within the chest of the captain. He who wields the Fist of Vengeance relic, the Ice Captain, Ivorness Fost. Like every member of the Crimson Fist, his life was given new purpose by Snagrod's war. Fost's parents were members of the Imperial Guard, and they died in service to the Emperor during that infamous Orc invasion. Ivorness was a child of perhaps 10 years when the Orcs threw him into the slave pits. He earned his daily food by fighting Gretchen to the death with a sharp stick. The amused Orc slaver boss earned teeth because of Fost's diminutive fury. The first time Ivorness saw a Space Marine was when the Orc horde was destroyed by the Crimson Fists. His feet were set upon a righteous path that day. Many Astartes physically changed during their indoctrination. Space wolves grow canines, and Cararidans become pale of skin with black eyes and, well, creepy. Captain Fost literally looks like a pale Primarch Rogel Dawn. My research shows that many of his successes are diplomatic, strategic, physical, and tactical. As an Astartes aspirant and scout, Fost studied the rites of war. Standing beside him, fear dissolves. I've experienced this personally during conversation. His inspiring presence is palpable and seems to be a natural extension of his personality. The Ice Captain doesn't use rank to rule his company, he inspires. Losing fear is useful on the battlefield, but off the field of battle, Fost and everybody under his command are an unstoppable, zealous force. Under his command, the Sixth Company has not only complied with the Codex Astartes, but used the Codex Astartes mandates to assist other companies within the Crimson Fist chapter. Captain Fost reasoned that each chapter has a 1,000-member total strength limit. That gives each of the 10 companies approximately 100 Space Marines. If the 6th Company uses less than 100 Space Marines, other companies can increase their numbers and still remain compliant. Thus, there are no living troops in the 6th Company's fast attack per se, only tarantula sentry guns and air defense platforms. Predator tanks, rapier teams, and firestrike servo turrets are deployed instead of devastators and hellblasters. Invicta tactical warsuits and apothecaries are the preferred choice of elite units. This practical philosophy extends to the individual Marines' equipment throughout the 6th Company. Firstborn Marines clad in Mark II armor take the battlefield beside Gravis Mark X Primaris and Centurions. Several of the company's heavy weapons have been in service since the Heresy. The entire armory is meticulously maintained by the Tech Marines and Servitors under the watchful cybernetic eyes of Jezekiah Fjord. I had the privilege of interviewing Captain Fost. His voice is a combination of baritone and gravel. He addressed my comparison of the Crimson Fist to the Black Templars directly and honestly. Do we ever retreat? Yes, of course we do. Retreat is an excellent tactic used to draw an opponent into ambushes or separate them from supply and support. An overly aggressive opponent has an exploitable weakness. The 6th Company has assisted rebuilding Rinswell defenses without the construction of Imperial Fist-style impenetrable bastions. Orbital defense platforms, an astropathic choir, and Sister Sororitas Temple on the continent of Telena are the only notable exceptions. Captain Fost explained, in the face of an unstoppable enemy, all fortifications will eventually fall. This is a difficult truth. Instead, Rinswell is peppered with strategically hidden caches of ammunition, comms equipment, medical supplies, miles of trenches, Aegis defense lines, and bunkers. We defend Rinswell by waging a grinding war of attrition. In a war of attrition, such defenses exact a higher toll on enemy forces. They are easily abandoned because nothing as significant as a building is lost. An enemy does not benefit by overrunning an abandoned trench because they'll be booby-trapped and pre-targeted by Imperial Guard Basilisk artillery. To facilitate this tactic, every tracked vehicle has both additional armor and dozer blades, even the Land Raider. During a campaign, real estate and equipment are essential, but life is paramount. Sacrificing an automated tarantula turret or losing a bunker is inevitable and acceptable during a pitched battle. Loss of a Crimson Fist Marine is not. Therefore, the Ice Captain made common the use of breacher shields. Chainswords are modified and backlogged to the forearm of the Marine. This change complemented a defensive fighting style and is incorporated in the 6th Company close combat doctrine. Aegis defense lines and hammerfall drop fortifications are commonly used by the 6th Company. Captain Fost mandated that an apothecary accompany troops to the battlefield whenever possible. I questioned, a Space Marine adopting a defensive hand-to-hand combat style? Grinning, Captain Fost chuckled and replied, I doubt Astartes' defensive combat much resembles your concept of a defensive. Yes, we augment holy bolters and blades with shields. An unstoppable opponent is terrifying, but manageable. A foe that is seemingly unkillable, standing resolutely in a phalanx before an enemy assault, shatters enemy morale. It is not just the frontline foe that we are demoralizing with a defensive combat tactic. The true target is their command structure. Captain Fost continued, They witness their elite troops stymied, bogged down, delayed. It disrupts everything enemy command expects to happen in the flow of battle. Their spear-tip blunted, holy bolters, chainswords, and faith in the Emperor cause a paradigm shift in the enemy command tactics. When that happens, the enemy leaders sacrifice troops to save themselves. The battle is ours. I decided to push my luck and ask his opinion on Lieutenant O'Neill. He's a fine officer and is perfect for commanding the vanguard of guerrilla missions. How could you understand anything he said? Note to self, Captain Fost is far better at statesmanship than his record indicates. He gave me exactly what he once reported in my data slate, and then immediately pivoted to a personal question. Unsatisfied with his answer, I let an uncomfortable silence fill the room. Realizing this, Captain Fost explained. You've already interviewed Chaplain Heinrichsen and Tech Marine Fjord. Can you imagine the debate if I assigned either of them to lead a diplomatic mission? We Astartes began as human. We faithfully served the Emperor in a myriad of ways. My last meeting with Captain Fost was within the library sanctum aboard the Claymore-class corvette, the Deinonychus. During the interview, he paused and stroked his beard thoughtfully, as if weighing what he was about to say. Inquisitor Acolyte Naerina, King Cameron of Helligan, and the Knights of Noble House Tyntagal have petitioned both the Crimson Fists and the Cadian Astra Militarum for aid. They are in a pitched battle to reclaim planet Helligan from the Orc. Their need is dire. If Helligan falls to the Xenos, then the entire planet will unwillingly become a staging ground for another Orc war. The low-key sector cannot afford another Orc war. All of our battle line companies are currently engaged. We are at our limits. He continued, I requested a meeting with Ordo Theoreticus because I believe you are uniquely qualified to assist. The fall of Cadia and the Cicatrix Maledictum crippled Imperial fleets. Forge World shipyards' production is strained beyond their limits. My company needs warp-capable transportation to Helligan. Ordo Theoreticus collects Imperial knowledge. Use the knowledge you've collected. Use every contact and informant at your disposal. Acolyte Naerina, I believe you possess more than a melodic voice, dry humor, sharp wit, and a keen eye. Set the entirety of your being and more to this task. Lord Inquisitor Remlace has more than the Tempestus science at his disposal. For the sake of noble King Cameron, the mighty knights of House Tyntagal, the imperial citizens of Helligand, and more, get my company a warp-worthy vessel!" Punctuating the last sentence, Captain Fost slammed his fist on the table. The solid oaken and ornately carved table broke. Anticlimactically, he obviously didn't expect that to happen. Surveying the carnage, he looked me in the eye with an apologetic mix of humility and purpose and said, "I am desperate and already exhausted every other resource before contacting Ordo Theoreticus. Without a ship, we are merely spectators to battles we should be waging in the Emperor's holy name." There you have it. Astartes have no authority over the Inquisition, quite the opposite in fact. But our duty is to the Emperor, and our purposes align. Something about his genuine nature, honesty and purpose, mixed with humility. I knew my feet were on a righteous path. I spent the next 15 hours frantically rifling through data on every Imperial Forge World shipyard and Astartes vessel in the low-key sector and beyond. Destroyed, dry-docked, reduced to scrap, corrupted and slated for destruction, lost in the warp, etc., etc. Nothing was available. I was defeated and understood the frustration that can drive a Space Marine captain to pound an innocent table into firewood. Captain Fost's example led me to a simple, humble act. I had failed and needed help from my superior. Deep breath, I sent the text. "Inquisitor Remlace, I could use a little help with this issue." And then I waited impatiently. Hours passed, and the thought of failing at this impossible mission irritated my very soul. Sleep was replaced with wide-eyed thought. Lord Inquisitor Remlace is on the very same vessel. I considered walking up to his sanctum on the Deinonychus and demanding information. What good is genius or madness and a library of information when lives are at stake? An impossibly long day passed before I got a reply. Purest intent. Lord Inquisitor Remlace's reply consisted of 2 words, purest intent. The brother chapter of the Crimson Fists, the Black Templars fought against the Orc War on planet Armageddon. The Salamanders, Astra Militarum, and Invigilatus Titan Legion all defended Hive Hellsreach. The Orc forces crashed a strike cruiser-class battle barge, Purest Intent, close to the Hive. Purest Intent was one of the Shadow Wolves Astartes vessels. The Shadow Wolves chapter fell at the Battle of Veradon to Tyrannid Hive Fleet Behemoth. How the Orc came to possess it is a mystery. What's important is, during the winter of Armageddon, the Purest Intent was stowed to a spaceport, repaired, is currently unassigned, and awaits an astropathic choir. The machine spirit of the Purest Intent was angry, rebellious, and hostile. Replacing the machine spirit was scheduled and would have delayed being put into service to the Emperor by 2 years. The tech adepts worked tirelessly to appease the machine spirit without success. Meanwhile, repairs and upgrades by the Adeptus Mechanicus continued on the vessel. Most of the work was falling woefully behind schedule. This was all the Imperial record held. This was the limit of what I knew. Lord Inquisitor Remlace is somewhere between madman and genius. He found what I missed. Months ago, on Armageddon, a Mechanicus adept noticed that of all the repairs were barely on or behind schedule, with one exception, intruder defense. Every upgrade to boarding, intruder detection and repulsion was ahead of schedule. The senior Mechanicus tech priest was informed, and, given the resistance to all previous failed attempts at appeasing the machine spirit, an entire cargo bay was dedicated to intruder defense and expulsion. After bolstering boarding defense of the vessel 4-fold, all repairs and upgrades accelerated to at or ahead of schedule. In retrospect, it makes sense. A vessel that's true to the Emperor's guiding light and been violated by both the Tyrannid and Orc Xenos would rebel without adequate boarding defense. Though no faster nor heavily armored than any other strike cruiser-class battle barge, the Purest Intent would become a tomb to any hostile boarding action, unless the invaders are somehow immune to being shot by lasers, choked by chlorine, and ejected into the abyss of space. 8 months passed since the Ordo Theoreticus departed Rinsworld. The Purest Intent is rechristened the Gauntlet, and Captain Fost's company is deployed to Helligand on a reclamation crusade. Things are not going smoothly. The orc numbers were severely underestimated when the crusade began. The Gauntlet is patrolling and preventing any orc reinforcements from off-world while simultaneously providing orbital bombardment, but the outcome is still uncertain. Hive cities have fallen, but Gargant production has stopped. When we crossed the Cicatrix Maledictum and docked at the Fort Satellite Hectate, a huge data tome was among the supplies delivered to the Deinonychus. It required an inquisitorial seal to unlock the encryption. A data slate is thin and maybe the size of a roof shingle, or, well, slate. Despite its size, a data slate holds a tremendous amount of information. A data tome can easily contain 1,000,000 times the amount of information of a data slate. This is an Astartes data tome. It's huge by human standards, ergonomically designed for the largest size of a giant human, an Astartes. The dark leather cover had a circular insignia that combined both the Imperial Fist and the Adeptus Mechanicum. To my surprise, it was from Techmarine Jezekiah Fjord. He and I barely exchanged 5 minutes of conversation when I was on Rinswald, but we both had a deep fascination and love of the rare or lost tech. I was in the inner sanctum of my personal library. Opened, the datatome covered the entirety of my pedestal. It was marked Secundae Perfectus, meaning that it was a perfect copy of the original, but it was read-only and wasn't the original. Inside the giant, Astartes-sized tome was a note from acting chapter master Fost. The tattered parchment was oil-stained, wrinkled, and had the uniquely recognizable smell of bolter smoke. Who knows what it took for a torn piece of parchment to travel from a Helligan battlefield across the warp and finally arrive in my library. I am reminded of how Chapter Master Cantor met Primarch Gilliman, disheveled, too busy using a bolter or chainsaw to polish it. The note read, "Duty in the Holy Emperor's name is its own reward. I was right to believe in you. The people of Helligan may never know the valuable role you played in their defense. Sorry about the table." With a click, I activated the first file of the data tome, and was awe-stricken. To my astonished eyes, the holoprojector displayed a power fist. The Fist of Vengeance was revealed. Techmarine Fjord meticulously documented everything about the holy relic for over 2 centuries. Measurements, manufacture, specifications, power supply, metallurgy, field strength and amplitude, modifications, and every maintenance record for 2 centuries is recorded here. All of this is at my fingertips. During the third reading, I clutched it into my chest and began to weep. Never have I received such a gift. Reverently, I placed the data tome in the ship's archive and encrypted the security. Duty in the Holy Emperor's name is its own reward.